John Crist is a longtime stand-up comedian who is currently traveling the country on his emotional support tour that stops here in Austin on Friday, December 8th at ACL Live at the Moody Theater. Just a few tickets remain for that show. Go to acllive.com to snag those. Check out all of his stuff at johncristcomedy.com. John, thank you so much for the time. Great talking with you again. How you doing today?
What's going on, brother? About to pack up the bags, load up the tour bus, and head your way, my man.
Cool. Well, I'm excited because I'm going to be at the show at ACL Live at Moody Theater on Friday night. As I just told you before we hit record here, I've seen a lot of stand-up in this city, and I've seen some music shows at ACL Live. I've never seen stand-up before, so I'm thrilled that you're the guy that gets to help me understand just how great a venue that is for stand-up comedy too.
You know what? I thought you were going to go as a comedian. I thought if you talk about your first time, I thought you were going to use a couple of the different ways to describe that. But yeah, that's the way we'll say it like that. Yeah, comedy at that place is awesome because it's like pretty close. It's not 360, but it goes all the way to your 180s.
Yeah,
and that's it goes all the way around you. So comedy, it's kind of it's an experience that you kind of share with the person next to you. So you need to kind of be a little tight in there.
Have you ever performed in the round before where you literally have an audience all around you?
Oh, yeah.
Mixed reviews from people. Some comedians love it, and some comedians, it just freaks them out.
Yeah, it is. I did this place called the Wagon Wheel up in, it was like an Amish barn up in, I don't know where it was, Pennsylvania somewhere. And that was like, the only venue there was. I mean, historically, Dane Cook has done it. One of his specials was in the round, and then Nate Bargatze did his last special in the round. But yeah, the round is a unique experience. Obviously, you need all the monitors to when the comedian's not facing you. We've done it a handful of times. It's hit or miss.
Yeah, it's like you have to pay attention to not only what you're saying and the material that you're trying to present to the people. You've got to make sure that you're kind of turning in all directions, so no one group is facing your backside the entire time, right?
I think somebody who was it? They thought they just stood stationary and the stage moved. But they told him like, no, you got to move. Like you got to run around too. Yeah, I don't know where you deliver the joke to. You just go section by section, or do you move faster? I mean, that it's probably like a lot of things. You get some practice at it, and then you figure out if you like it or not.
Well, it's been really cool to watch your career evolve over the years. And I was just listening to the latest episode of your podcast, Net Positive. You were talking about doing 4 shows in Phoenix recently.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear your perspective on understanding the different crowds that you were going to be performing for. Like the crowd on a certain night, that's the first group to buy tickets. Those are going to be the most hardcore stand-up comedy fans. So they're going to get it a little bit more than the crowd who's buying for that 4th show, who, as you put it in your podcast, they may think that you're going to be showing them videos the entire time, but you're going to be doing your stand-up comedy. So it's fascinating to hear you talk about just getting yourself prepared for the type of crowd that you're going to be performing for, and maybe having a little bit of patience with that less experienced crowd on the Sunday night show.
Comedy's funny in a way because a lot of, like you said, you're like, you've gone to comedy shows before, but think of the amount of people that have ever been to 2 live comedy shows. Let's say a handful, 5, right? So I'm thinking if I went and saw my favorite band, right? If I went and saw Drake or Coldplay or Hillsong or whoever you want to say, and you saw them, and then you saw them the next night, and then the next night, or we've been to a handful of Morgan Wallen concerts, I guess. You like to say one show is better than the next, you got to go to a bunch of them to know. Like you got to go to at least 5, I'm guessing, to know, oh, that was a good show or the bad show. So we obviously know as performers, oh my gosh, somebody met me in the airport the other day and they were like, we were at the Greenville show. And I go, early show or late show? Because I know how every show is. And if like, that's a different experience. Now the crowd probably doesn't know. And a lot of my fans it's their first time coming to comedy. We've been to the ACL Live before, but if you haven't been to the show, I mean, there's comedy clubs, there's arenas, there's small theaters, big theaters, there's amphitheaters, there's outdoor shows, there's brewery shows. Like there's just so many different types of comedy shows that yeah, it's hard to compare them to each other, at least as a fan. The artist knows, though.
Not to diminish any of the other venues, but do you have a favorite type of venue that you like performing in? Like, I would assume that most comedians' favorite venue is that 200 to 300 seat club that has lower ceilings. Hopefully there's not too much food being served there, so the distraction of fried food isn't wafting through the air the entire time. But what is your favorite type of venue to perform to?
I mean, we obviously, all of us, you know, when COVID happened, we couldn't, all the theaters were closed and the clubs were still open because they were considered restaurants.
Yeah.
So we could still work in those. And it's a different feeling, right? Like you can talk to the crowd. If you're at ACL Live and somebody says something in the front row, there's 2,500 people in there. The rest of the people can't hear it. So it's hard to kind of do crowd work or crowd interaction. But also when you do the big ones, that's a little bit more formal. It's a little bit more polished. It's like the comedy club is you're just kind of not riffing, but you're going back and forth with the audience. It's more of a conversation. And then you go to an arena. That's like an act. That's like with the screens and all the sometimes pyro and smoke and all that. So I mean, I would say I love country music. I want to see a country artist outside during the summer is where I want to see a country artist, or I want to see a country artist in a stadium. I'm not a big country artist in the arena guy. It's like just like the basketball arena or whatever arenas down there in Austin, you're like, I've seen a bunch of them, but everybody's different. I like the amphitheaters and the sheds is what they call them when I like to see country music.
Similar to the subject of people who are newer to comedy shows coming to see you or coming to see anybody else for that matter. Comedy is going through a sort of stand-up comedy that is going through a sort of renaissance right now, which is awesome. I love more people being exposed to the art form, but with that comes the responsibility of understanding how to act at a comedy club and or comedy show, which means there's unwritten rules in place that we need to help enlighten the people on. For instance, and I love to ask this of comedians because I can only pursue this from the audience side of things. Like, don't turn this into a Mystery Science Theater 3000 situation. Nobody wants to hear your commentary while the comedian's setting up the jokes. Just laugh when you need to laugh, clap when you need to laugh, and otherwise let that person do their thing. So from the stage side of things, is there an unwritten rule that you hope everybody who's attending a comedy show understands?
I would just say, especially for my fans, I mean, you got Austin might be the closest I'm coming to them for 4 hours. And they might have bought these tickets last Christmas. So you're thinking about this person has waited 9 months or whatever to come see their favorite comedian. They traveled all the way here. They got a hotel. Like, you can say, "Oh my God, we love you," and then I'll yell out back. And then, but if you're talking about railroading the show so we don't have to deal with you, and there's a lot of people around you that love the show and love to come see me, and you're taken away from them. So I mean, people have yelled out things that are funny, and I think what TikTok has done is kind of like emboldened people, because a lot of those crowd work clips that you see go viral on TikTok, which is good for comedy because people are in the building, but it's really pretty simple from the security standpoint. If we say, "Hey, no talking," I mean, Kevin Hart does it. If you talk, you get kicked out of there, and you see one person get kicked out, and that's about the end of that. So usually it goes about as long as the comedian will allow it to. Now, if the comedian, in all honesty, doesn't have much to talk about on his side, he might relish that. If he doesn't have really much to say, or he might hope for someone to pop off in the crowd because that's going to be a fun clip for him online. I don't particularly love it, but usually you find that the people are trying to be helpful, or they love the idea of like, throwing tomatoes at someone or heckling them because you hate them, that you would rarely see that, except here's where you'd see that. And when you see videos of it is in New York City, where they didn't come to see you. They just came to the comedy club. So in my scenario, everybody came to see me and they got dressed, took a shower, and went out to dinner knowing what they were getting into. I don't think it's ever happened to me once. But let's say you go to open mic night in New York City and a comedian starts talking about something that is sensitive to you, whether it be religion, no matter what side, politics, no matter what side, health, family, violence or criminal behavior of some kind. I'm not going to say you shouldn't yell out. I mean, if you're not yell out, but maybe you shouldn't leave or be opposed to it. That's part of comedy. You want to do well, and you don't want to say things that are offensive. You want to kind of poke when you have spots, but leave that to Bill Burr, leave that to Louis C.K. Maybe an open micer that's doing a showcase in New York City. Maybe that's not the time.
It's a great point. Understands the show that you're going to see, but it's also important to understand the comedian that you're going to see too.
Yep.
Like if you're just blindly buying tickets, like I would hope, because you've obviously gained a lot of notoriety from the excellent satirical clips that you've put out on social media over the years. But I would hope that somebody watches some of your stand-up before they buy tickets for your show, because at least in my opinion, you're a little bit edgier on stage, and that's okay. Like that is the place to be a little bit edgier versus some of the clips that you've set up on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or elsewhere.
I would say back in the Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno days, like in the 90s, people, and I wasn't doing comedy at this time, but people would just go to the comedy club. They would just be like, hey, 7:00, we have a comedy club in our town. We're going to go to it. And then we're going to go to dinner at 9 or whatever it might be. That's like just like going to a show. And now with the internet and Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and especially comedy's not for everyone. You got a Jewish comedian, a Christian comedian, a Muslim comedian, a gay comedian, a black comedian. There's some podcast, like I live right next to Zany's, the comedy club here in Nashville. Sometimes I just go down there and you're like, I don't even know what this is. It's some like true crime podcast, and the fans in there are just rabid, right? The fans in there love this person and they're like, this is the best day of our lives. And if you didn't do any research and you just walked into the comedy club, that's crazy person behavior. In 2023, to just go into a comedy club blind is crazy, because it used to be, you go on the Tonight Show and then Johnny Carson would kind of knight you, and then you tour all across the country doing your jokes for everybody. And that's just not it's like everybody doesn't watch the Tonight Show. Everybody comes home from work and goes off in their little corners of their own podcasts or whatever entertainment they like. Nobody's watching the same stuff. Like there's 3 TV channels like back in the day.
Is Zany's your home club? Is that where you're working material in your home?
Yep. I live about 3 blocks from down there. So if I need to run something quick before I go out of town for the weekend, they let me sneak up on there.
How much are you working things out on the road? You're obviously in the middle of a pretty extensive tour right now. I would assume that there's ideas popping in your head. You're like, screw it, I got to get on stage and try this out.
Yeah, you can sneak one in every now and then on the road. I think you go to Zany's and maybe decide if the premise is funny. Like in general, is this a relatable idea? And then if you got a punchline or 2, you can go build out the joke on the road just with repetition and do it. But you can't, it's hard to introduce a topic in front of 3,000 people that you have no idea you just need to know if it's kind of in general relatable, and you can kind of take it from there. But it's hard to go blind in a theater, but I've done it before, and that if it doesn't work, I just make a joke about it or something.
Now, Nashville and Austin are compared frequently. think
Yeah.
Denver's in that category. Boise has a little bit of that. Portland too. Austin's obviously become a very friendly town for stand-up comedy. Is Nashville the
Yep.
same way? I've heard great things about that Zanies, but is
Oh, yeah.
Nashville a good place for a stand-up comedian to be?
Yeah, great place for a stand-up comic. I think there's a lot of I would say probably the most popular comedians around here, and I don't know why this has happened, but are generally clean, which is unique. So you got myself, Nate Bargatze
Mm-hmm.
lives here, Kathleen Madigan lives here, Henry Cho lives here, Jeff Allen lives here,
Mm.
as well as a bunch of young up and coming comics, Dusty Slay, Aaron Weber, a lot of guys that it's kind of like, if you want to be a race car driver, you should probably live in Charlotte.
Yeah.
That's where they all live, and that's where they all race. You can do it out of Minneapolis. It's just going to be much, much harder. So I think depending on the direction you want to go in your career, I mean, if I lived in Austin and had never done comedy before, or let's say Portland, that's going to be an uphill road for me. I could do it. It might be a little bit harder, but that's going to be an uphill road. That's funny that you said that.
Oh, no doubt, because you are dealing with so much more competition. Like, it's easier to become the best stand-up in Birmingham and then try and move to one of those places where things are a little bit more intense, right? And by the way, for every clean comedian in Nashville, there's always Theo Vaughn to balance things out too. In the other
Theo Vaughn. Hey, I would say there's no more articulate and compelling comedian working today than Theo Vaughn. I mean, the run that this guy is on, and to see, I mean, I told him the other day, we had a conversation. He was on Jelly Rolls on his podcast, and said he was in jail for drug trafficking, and then he got out and won. He got out, was nominated for a Grammy. He goes, "You're the only guy that's ever been nominated for a Gram and a Grammy." I mean, just off the top of his head in a conversation, that is unbelievable. I mean, this guy's brain needs to be studied for science. I mean, the run that Theo Vaughn has been on in the last 12, 16 months has been a joy to watch, man.
That's very cool to hear. Now, you're coming to Austin this Friday. I keep pretty good tabs on things. Have you performed in Austin before? Because I don't recall seeing you at Cap City or any of the other clubs around town.
Let's see. You know what? I kind of skipped the comedy club stage, at least in Austin. Like I was coming up in the comedy clubs, Denver and LA, and then I kind of got popular a little bit overnight, I would say. And then the first time I ever came to Austin, actually on tour, funny enough, was at a church.
Huh.
And I don't remember what the name of the church was, but it was probably in 2018. Or 2019. I did 2 shows at a church in Austin, which were unbelievable. And then that was the end of our tour. I remember that. And then 2019, I got canceled. And then 2020 and 2021 was COVID. And I think I was at ACL Live in 2022. I believe that show was sold out, and now I'm back again.
Dude, your cancellation is wild, and I'm not going to rehash the details. People can just go look that up. But in terms of like,
oh yeah, all good.
What was happening at that time and what you were going through, it blew my mind. And I was a little bit afraid to ask about it when you and I spoke about your book a couple years ago. And I'll maybe ask this question this way. That was a brutal experience for you to go through. And you obviously owned a lot of things on your side as well. What is the ultimate lesson that you took from that? Because that is something that nobody should have to go through in their lives, but you found yourself squarely in the middle of it, you know?
I mean, you look back at it now, and it was like if anybody would remember 2019, like anybody with a mic or a camera in front of them, like you're either on the radio or you got a podcast, or I mean, certainly any type of entertainer. People were like proactively like quitting their jobs. I mean, people were like, "Listen, I slept with my girlfriend in college, or I slept with a girl," or like, and it was like, "Hey, like I'm out. I work at Warner Brothers." Like, it was so the movement or whatever it was so almost like a witch hunt in a lot of ways. And no one had any, you couldn't defend yourself, you couldn't say nothing. And the idea that it was just so much shame surrounding especially the topic of sex, and especially definitely as a Christian, is like, dude, this is a Christian celebrity and sex is like the perfect storm for the media. And it was like people were chirping stuff online, saying stuff all the time. And it was such a scary time. Because I wasn't really comfortable with being famous or popular or whatever you call it. I just kind of stepped into this a year before, and all these quote allegations or whatever you call them were from when I was like an open micer, or like when I was like working in Vegas for like I was literally working for $30 a night, I remember. And like there was certainly no taking advantage of anyone, and definitely no power dynamic at play, but at the time the culture was not ready to hear my defense or my side or nothing. What the nail in the coffin is if that would happen today, we would kind of roll our eyes and move forward and never address it. But we're just so scared. It was so fear-based that I don't blame anyone else. I blame myself and the team that I had around me, that we reacted in fear, not in conjunction with who I was as a person. But
completely understandable in that moment because there was so much uncertainty. But one of the interesting zags that a lot of comedians have made since then, and I was talking with Donnell Rawlings about this last week, is that a lot of comedians have made a go of it, just doing things on their own, to where they aren't necessarily having to answer to any corporate sponsors going forward. They are answering to their fans. And if your fans are no longer buying tickets, then that's a completely different beast from you being canceled by a corporation that is all about virtue signaling and putting up all of these fronts versus actually doing anything substantive, and immediately acting rashly in the face of something that on its face looks bad without actually digging into anything.
Yeah. I remember asking my sister, in a month after it all had kind of blown over or whatever, I go, how many fans did I lose, like on social media? And she goes, none. I go, wait, what? She goes, yeah, they're all still there. I go, what? And then like my agent called and he was like, we got all these venues are lining up to book you. And I go, all right, wait, this doesn't make any sense, because I'm getting trashed on Twitter, right? Trashed on the internet, trashed in the news, but you're selling out the shows. So one of these things has to be true. Either the stuff on the internet is untrue, or the line around the block of fans that love your work is untrue. And you realize it's the people on Twitter that are we're not going to support you anyway. We're never coming to your show, and just want to hear themselves virtue signal, because it does feel good. It does feel good to, when someone else is above you, to kind of notch them down. And so you go, well, and that's everybody. That's not necessarily me. That's every human. You go, oh, one of these things has to be untrue. If someone's critical of you, and then also people are buying your product or still interacting with you or being your friend, either you're a monster or all these people that are your friends are lying to you. And you realize that the internet, I mean, some people shouldn't be allowed to have it. Let's just say that. But we've been able to come out the other side, and the show in Austin's full. So as are most of them on the tour. So it's been, and I'm a different person. Also, you going through something like that, and makes you stronger, more resilient, and make you really. What's worse from that happening is if that, honestly, I don't like to admit this, I guess, publicly, but what if that would have never happened? I would just be kind of in denial of who I was as a person, maybe still performing in churches, but not necessarily the role model that they were holding me up to be, and kind of living this double life. Like if I'm 4 years sober, since that day also, which is a miracle. So I'd probably, if that never happened, I'd probably still be performing in church, still probably be drinking in secret. I mean, I'm in a relationship now, so my life is, I would consider myself more of a Christian now than I was before, but more genuine, more empathetic towards every time a comedian, or even a comedian, every time a celebrity is getting crushed in the news, I find myself taking their side, usually.
Well, congratulations on all the things you just talked about, the sobriety, the committed relationship. That's all great. And to your point, if you hadn't gone through that hardship, who knows where you would be right now? And as a matter of fact, I think that it's weird to call you a Christian comic because you do cover Christianity in your act, and you are a Christian. But I also feel like, in a sense, that sells you short to a more general audience. But it's not like you're a Christian comic who is catering to the Branch Davidian mindset of Christianity.
Oh yeah. We don't have too many. We don't have too many of those jokes. If I do touch on something Christian, it would be something that any American would understand. Parents raising you very strict. Maybe I have a joke about David and Goliath or something, like very, very 40,000-foot Christian ideas that if you weren't, you don't live in Texas, but I don't live in Texas, but if someone made a joke about Dallas versus Houston, I'd be like, oh, I get it. I know that. I get it.
Exactly. You're much more representative of every Christian I know, who are level-headed people who at the end of every day, they have their faith.
Yeah. And I think as an artist, if, someone's a painter and they go, this person is an abstract painter, this person is a minimalist painter, whatever, it's kind of up to the people consuming the art to put it in a box. They like to, this person is a urban comic, he only performs for Black people. It's like, well, that's not true. I mean, that might be the majority of his audience, but he's for everybody. But it's easier, just as we do with this is a good guy, this is a bad guy, Democrats are the bad guys, Democrats are the good guys, or whatever side that you're on. It's easy to put, I'm a Georgia Tech fan, so I hate the Georgia Bulldogs, or that means all Georgia Bulldog fans are bad. No, they're not. There's a lot of great ones, but in general, they're pretty insufferable people. But that's a stereotype. But congratulations to UT, by the way, going to the playoffs in college football. It's huge. I'm going to make some jokes about that actually at the show now they mention it.
Is that right? What did you say you're a fan of again?
I'm a Georgia Tech fan, so I hate Georgia. So I was happy to see them not go.
God, I feel bad for you guys. It's been since Calvin Johnson, since had a fun, entertaining football team to watch, huh?
Maybe back in the Joe Hamilton, George Godsey days, baby. But we had a split national championship with Colorado in 1990. That was the last time we were on top.
That's right. Well, good luck on those UT football jokes, and
thank you, brother.
Glad to be able to see you coming in town this Friday. Here's John Crist. There are scattered tickets remaining at ACL Live at the Moody Theater. Go to acllive.com to try and snag those. Check out his website, johnchristcomedy.com. It's where you can follow him on social media. Check out his previous specials and a whole lot more. John, thank you so much for the time again, man. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to the next time.
Trey, you're the man, dude. Come and say hi after the show.
Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. And thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. We'll talk to you next time on Books on Pod.